Wow, come on! Look at that.
Supernatural phenomenon that we may hear about here and there in Index with the rules that structure that
hell?
universe.
Look at that gun.
Something that's also mirrored in their power systems, which is the one unique thing this franchise has to offer.
Ah, come on, man. I'm glad they really put that limiter based off of the fact that he has to constantly calculate the mathematics formula for bending and twisting each vector.
Well,
Don't worry, I'll come back to
one
it.
question left. How do you get into Index?
Yes, the question of the day. How
Do you want the long version or the short?
No,
Index
don't come with
Season
that again.
1, then
Wow, come on! Look at that. Alright, welcome back, fellas. So I just finished checking out all the openings for Toaru Majutsu no Index series and also the major composers for the opening songs, which was majorly sung by Fruitside. Just checked out the collection of some of the songs together with some of the stage performance of their songs, and man, it's really totally freaking phenomenal. If you have not seen that, please just check it out. Alright, now I'll be checking out the fascinating world of Index, Railgun, and why you should watch it. Okay, now this was done by Gigok. Alright, so I'm planning on giving only my Railgun, or rather Toaru Majutsu no Index, a shot. Alright, I'm planning on checking out anime because I really love the sequences I saw in the opening songs. Man, they look so interesting and I really love their character design. Okay, so it's something I'm planning on watching, so I want to just check this out and see if it will further jolt my interest in checking out the anime. Alright, so this was done by Giga. Alright, the link is down in the description below. So without further ado, let's just dive right into this and see what Giga has to say. Alright, and please don't forget to hit the like and the subscribe button. So without further ado, let's just get into this. Onegaishimasu.
why do you like Index? Why are you hyped for Index? Because here's my opinion, I don't get it. It's not bad, it's just really mediocre.
What?
And that's my opinion on Index. This was me, literally a month ago, reacting to the new Index Season 3 trailer as I was streaming my impressions of the full season chart. See,
I'm sure there is more to it than meets the eye.
Whatever you want to call it franchise has always been somewhat of a mystery for me. From my perspective, it always looked like your typical generic high school fantasy action light novel that has been done a million different times nowadays, and any attempts to watch the animated franchise has always been somewhat of a mystery for me. From my perspective, it always looked like your typical generic high school fantasy action light novel that has been done a million different times.
Wait, the Chivalry of a Failed Knight. Okay, these are like other similar light novels based off of almost the same stuff. I wanted to ask whether Chivalry of the Failed Knight of a Failed Knight is like was done by maybe like a spin-off of Toaru, but it's not. It's just separate, just within the same genre of this. Okay, let's continue.
Nowadays, and any attempts to watch the anime did nothing to prove me otherwise. Yet it's a franchise that had one of those fan bases that would praise it to high heavens. You know, one of those rabid fan bases that seems nigh on obsessed with a franchise and would take any opportunity they had to spread the word of the holy gospel like they were recruiting for a new religious cult or something. So after
Fate, we can never escape fate.
Before a new season getting announced seemingly out of nowhere, I said, you know what? Fuck it. I'm going to try to get to the bottom of why this franchise is so beloved by so many, despite by my accounts, it looking like a dated mid-2000s generic light novel franchise that time should have left behind. And through that journey, I discovered a unique
it's not that
world
good?
that blends
What's it saying? What's it trying to say?
science in a way I'd never seen before. A grand narrative that fits the bill for a shared universe I had been searching for in anime for so long. A power system so intriguing it tested my knowledge of my university education.
I so much
that
love the
before I
animation,
knew
God.
it, something happened. I became a fan.
Come on, this song.
Index has become my new obsession,
song.
and sometimes there's nothing quite like the feeling of completely losing yourself in the franchise, consuming every little thing it has to offer, researching the intricacies of the world mechanics, finding every little bit you can about the lore and background, and you do it because the deeper you go, the more rewarding the experience becomes as a whole. This franchise was exactly that for me, so today I wanted to share some of the reasoning why I love
that character design so much. I mean, the drawing for the anime, it's looking really good.
started, I wanted to give a quick shout out to Bookwalker, who are doing an Index giveaway right now if you want to win some figures. Details are coming at the end of this video if you feel like having a dabble in the franchise, because I understand that as big as Index was in its heyday, it's been 7 years since its last anime adaptation, so I'm sure there are many of you now who have not even heard of the franchise, so here's a bit of background. A certain Magical Index is a light novel series that started in 2004 and has since spawned a grand franchise sporting multiple anime adaptations, spin-offs in mangas and anime forms, and lots and lots and lots of light novels. Many people are familiar with the franchise through its
but it's not up to that or Fate's, spin-offs and
mainly follow a spiky-haired protagonist Toma Kamijo on his adventures of fighting magicians, picking up chicks and solving literally every problem by punching it in the face.
So it's a womanizer.
But arguably equally as popular is its spin-off series, A Certain Scientific Railgun, which focuses on the adventures of Mikoto Misaka, a powerful esper with the ability to control electricity, shrug off teleporting lesbians, and is basically Pikachu as a tsundere anime girl.
What?
From that brief description, it may be hard to see the appeal of Index because that's what it looks like from the outside, and
Majutsu no Index
is a bit daunting is kind of an understatement.
Based off of the guy.
My personal experience,
Kagaku no Railgun is based off of the girl.
Explanations about chronology, read and watch order, I never really saw anything to explain to me what the core appeal of Index was and why it's amassed such a loyal fan base. So that's what I'm gonna try.
Maybe it's because of the opening songs.
A good place to start, instead of explaining specific plot details,
and
is to start explaining what
showed up
Index
in
is as
animation
a
and effects.
Index is set in a world very reminiscent of the one we're in right now, except both magic and science play a massive part in it. You have the world of magic, which has its roots in faith and religion that can be traced back through various myths and legends, and has shaped a lot of the world's history through secret organizations and practices. This is where you see a lot of the traditional fantasy elements, with mages and magicians drawing their powers through spells and magic, and it finds its basis through a lot of real-life
very
lore
much
we can find in
interesting.
this world. However, you also have the world of science, as the main setting is the modern sci-fi world of Academy City. Here you have a city that's advanced to be 30 years ahead technology-wise to what we have today, and is full of people who have gained supernatural power through the practices of science and experimentation. And while both these worlds
they
are
experimented on
separate, they are
them, like the characters,
both vying to be the dominant power to shape the world of Index, which serves as the basis for the various stories told in this setting. And it's really hard to get this perspective from the beginning. This is where a lot of the confusion about what the franchise is about lies. Many people, myself included, were only really exposed through the plot synopsis of the opening arc. Something about a generic spiky-haired boy whose right hand has the power to cancel out any spiky-haired supernatural ability.
Most MCs are like that.
Into some lolly nun that has a load of magic books in her head who's getting chased by this mysterious magical organization with your usual trashy power fantasy stuff. And while this is technically what happens, it's not an accurate representation of the franchise at all. Despite its name, Index is not actually about Index, the lolly nun character, nor is it really about Toma, despite him getting most of the screen time. A better way to describe this series from a broader perspective is it's like a shared universe with many moving parts having more in common with things like Game of Thrones or the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Think of every story arc as a different movie in the MCU. Each arc is a self-contained story that adds a new element or cast of characters to the world, whether they focus exclusively on the science side of things or the magic side of things, and occasionally you get bigger crossover events that involve every party, where you get to see the normally separate cast and elements come together. Because of this structure, you can have multiple storylines running in parallel, and sometimes you get to see the same events happen but from different characters' perspectives, and while not every story arc is essential to follow along with the grander narrative, they all add something to the canon of this shared universe. So while all the different series stretched across multiple mediums may look confusing and daunting, what it really means is that there are multiple ways to get into this franchise. You can start with Index, or you can even start with Railgun if you so please. You can read the light novels for some arc, then switch to the manga, then switch to the anime, or vice versa.
I thought like
It doesn't
Index
really matter how you choose
connects
to
to Railgun. I didn't know that that one is just spin-off and is spinning on its own way, while Index is just its own
thing. This is why it has its called Railgun a spin-off, because while technically the events aren't as important to the main narrative, in the same way that, for example, Black Panther doesn't move forward the grander Infinity Stones plotline of the MCU, it's a great story and serves to give the viewer a better understanding of the characters and why they act the way they do in the main series. Index's core appeal stems from this expanded universe and how extensively it blends in its science fiction and fantasy elements in a coherent world. I've made a video before expressing my desire to see some kind of shared universe in anime form, and I didn't realize at the time how closely Index fitted this bill, because for all you can say about the characters and protagonists that make up the world, as good or bad as the characters may be, they aren't individually what makes this franchise what it is. They aren't what drives its fan base to be as invested or obsessed as they are. It's the world, which is encompassed by its setting, Academy City.
Okay. Okay.
Academy City is a weird beast to tackle because while it's technically just a backdrop for all these story arcs taking place, I'd actually argue that it is the main character of the franchise because while Toma may be the face and main protagonist of Index early on, as the world expands and more characters get introduced, Index becomes the story of Academy City itself. It's the inhabitants of Academy City whose storylines we get to follow. It's Academy City that is the driving force for the grander conflict. It's Academy City which serves as the core thread that connects
everything is centered on the academy.
Together. Even if events aren't happening there, it always exudes a constant presence and honestly seems like
the Academy City,
place, which unfortunately the anime doesn't always do justice with its simple portrayal of fucking bad CG wind turbines everywhere. Because of the amounts of strange different happenings revolving around this city, the series can take many forms and genres depending on the arc and character we're following. Sometimes it's a dark sci-fi involving horrific human experimentation. Sometimes it's a fantasy action.
So I got that right. We're experimenting on the characters.
Sometimes it's a fluffy
to give them the powers they have.
Sometimes it's all of those things. Admittedly, I found the story arcs that focused on science far more interesting than the ones that focused on magic, but what made it all worth sticking through was when you were able to see all the various characters and plot lines converge. Some of my favourite moments were actually just seeing different characters from the various story arcs meeting for the first time and interacting with each other. There was a few episodes in Index Season 2 that was purely dedicated to bullshit
just like,
slice of life fluff involving all the cast members, and it was honestly some of my favourite
Captain America Civil War, what are Avengers, they just bring each
of elements you like. You'll have
heroes from different of their own aspects.
And characters that you absolutely love, which, let's be honest, is
gives them a story and makes it all good.
It's the juxtaposition of all these different narrative elements you wouldn't normally see together put in one place that makes it so interesting.
Exactly.
You not only have mages, espers, you
lovely
have angels, alchemists, underground assassins. You got modern military SWAT teams fighting magical nuns, and what I like is how much they try to ground
I wonder how many
in our
episodes
world,
this thing has.
Every element, no matter how ridiculous, has a basis from our real world. Supernatural phenomenon that we may hear about here and there are given an explanation in Index with the rules structure that
hell, look at that gun. That's what, like, I was about to say, which kind of gun is that?
Something that's also mirrored in their power systems, which is the one other big unique thing this franchise has to offer.
Come on, man. I love the looks of this.
I love the power system.
After it looks so amazing. That's just what is attracting me to it too.
There are two entirely different systems that work in parallel. One for the magic side of things and one for
like
the
their
telekinetic
powers together with some magic-based power.
In our own world. The magic system was a bit more confusing for me, but it makes sense in the lore because they are meant to be supernatural phenomena that cannot be explained or analyzed via any sort of scientific means and reasoning. So instead, the basis of magic in the Index universe comes from real-life mythology and lore you can find historically. From Christianity to Judaism to Norse and Egyptian mythology to Feng Shui, it all finds its roots through stories told through world history and religion. To give an example, someone like Jesus in the Index universe would have been a magic user. However, for me, the standout power system comes from the science side of things, and that's what I want to focus on, because what makes this stand out so much is how grounded every ability is in real-world science and physics, which, you know, is something I appreciated heavily.
Even with all the electricity, the lasers, and the whatnot.
In electronic and electrical engineering.
wait.
In real-world science, and you went to university to get a master's in electronic and electrical engineering.
That big up boy.
I know this is a weird time to flex this, but I paid tens of thousands of pounds for this piece of paper only to become a YouTuber, so let me have this.
Oh my goodness. Jeez, I get the
her
feeling.
ability is pretty simple. She can control electricity. Nothing new here in the world of anime powers, but it's not so much the ability itself, but more so the logic behind its application. At the simplest level, she can shock people, but thanks to my masters in electronic and electrical engineering, I know that electricity has more applications than just this, and so does she. Because if she can generate an electric current, that means she can generate a magnetic force. Something you'd know if you learned the right-hand rule, which is what I did in my masters in electronic and electrical. Okay,
that's enough, please.
Thanks to being able to create a magnetic force, she can stick to metallic objects, control debris, manipulate iron sands, and vibrate it at a fast enough frequency to make it a buzzsaw. Let's go even further.
Nice application of our powers, though.
Magnetic and electrical force? Well, you get something called a Lorentz force, and what can you do with a Lorentz force? Well, you can make a fucking railgun, which is a real-life weapon our modern military has been developing.
Hey.
If you couldn't guess that's why the series is called Railgun. The theory adds so many layers to someone's ability, and thus your combat strength doesn't necessarily come from raw power, but it's also your understanding of science and physics and how best to apply your ability.
Yeah.
And this is something
looks
I
interesting
found
now. Why they start off
original
with
and made the
it
science
saying
fights
it's just
that
like,
much more interesting.
you know,
But I
generic?
think the one character that really encapsulates just how innovative these abilities can be while still grounding it in real-world physics, it's Accelerator, who has one of the most
I love the
unique
look of
abilities
this
I've
character.
seen
He
in all
looks
of
like
anime, and
a
no, it's
character
not
from
his ability
Bogo
to
Stray
laugh like a
Dogs. The
beatboxing
face,
hyena.
that is weird smile.
Accelerator's
Jeez.
ability is vector transformation. Now, for those of you who didn't pay attention in maths and physics in school, a vector is any quantity that has a magnitude and direction, and what this is... I'm literally explaining fucking vectors in a video about anime! Pretty much every
It
force you
happens
can think of
sometimes.
can be broken down into vector components. An accelerator can control the magnitude and direction, and what that means is any attack, no matter how big or powerful thrown at him, he's able to control not only the direction, but also the size of that attack, redirecting it back at his opponent or anywhere that he pleases. But the application of this
Wow.
ability goes so far
Interesting.
beyond that because so many things have a vector component. He can start earthquakes by tapping his foot on the ground. He can block
Whoa.
incoming sound. He can control the wind. He can manipulate blood flow. He can
okay,
accelerate
okay. We have
any
an OP
object
dude
just
here.
by poking at it. If something has a direction, he can control it. And what you can do with this is only restricted by your knowledge of vectors. Now, I'm sure you're
Hey.
thinking such an ability sounds ridiculously overpowered.
I'm telling you.
because it is. So the limitations the author has given around this ability, I feel, are just as smart. Because
one
there
that has
isn't a
that
limit
stuff
to
on
the
his
size
neck.
of the force he can manipulate or something, but his limitations come in, get this, mathematical calculations. That's right, his kryptonite
Okay.
is fucking algebra! Vectors can be complex mathematical concepts to calculate, and if you're going to apply these manipulations in a combat situation, you need to
That
be
means
able
he's
to calculate
constantly
how to do
calculating
it
it
in
on the
real
go.
time.
Yeah.
This is exactly Accelerator's limitations. He has an onboard computer to assist him with the
okay.
calculations, so if there's too much
Nice
data to
handicap
process
there.
or the computer's battery runs out, that is his limit on what he can manipulate, and in my
Wait, so
honest
that thing on his
opinion,
neck
that
amplifies
is-
his
he has an
calculation
onboard computer to
capability?
assist him with the calculations, so if there's too much
Okay.
data to process or the computer's battery runs out, that is his limit on what he
Wow.
can manipulate, and
Interesting.
in my
Wow,
honest opinion,
it
that's
looks
fucking
totally fascinating
genius,
now,
because
yeah.
it logically makes sense if such a ridiculous ability actually existed in this
Mm-hmm.
world. Which means if Accelerator's ever in a bind, there's only one thing he can do.
In the face of overwhelming odds, I'm left with only one option. I'm gonna have to science the shit out of this.
Of course, understanding the theory behind these powers doesn't actually matter in the wider context, but for pretty much anyone who comes from a scientific background, it feels incredibly rewarding, and it adds that extra layer to every fight scene, which is something I found totally unique. Alright, how many people have I lost with that last section?
No,
Is
no,
anyone
no,
still
I
here?
understood the yes now.
Engineers? Mathematicians?
Anyone that
Physicists?
understands maths,
Anyone else?
or rather basic
Anyone?
high-level maths.
If you've made it this
Understand
far
all
and
that.
all this sounds exactly like your cup of tea, well, this is the time when I start putting terms and conditions to everything I've said. A lot of them. There is one thing
Okay,
I've glossed
so
over
what
to
is it?
focus on the positives and appeal of this franchise, and that is just how goddamn hard it tries to put new people off from getting into it. Remember when I
What?
said I was put off by how generic and boring the beginning arc seemed to be? Well, that still holds true and can still definitely be applied to a lot of the early arcs in Index. The franchise came at a time when trashy harem bait high school fantasy light novel adaptations hadn't already oversaturated the industry, and going
Okay.
back through it now, it
I
has
love this character so much.
really not aged well. Early Index embodies almost all of the overused tropes, character archetypes, and cliches we have gotten bored of since its initial release, and it ends up coming across as a run-of-the-mill shonen action show. Considering how much of it revolves around Toma, he's just not a very interesting character and only gets development further down in the light novel. Not only that, but his ability to cancel out other abilities is just so fucking boring compared to everything else I've talked about in the franchise's power systems. It's not bad per
not-
se,
yeah, I was
it's
just about to say that.
extremely generic, and this is what makes it a really hard sell. I would like to say that you could easily power through it and quickly get to the good stuff, and while there are definitely some highs I'm going to touch upon,
So how many
there is a lot
episodes
of
of
bullshit
this
to
before I
wade
get
through.
interested?
Entire season's worth of episodes, mind you, which in today's standard of short, hard-hitting 12-episode anime series is probably going to put off about 90% of you. But this is exactly why there's no such thing as a casual fan of the franchise. Only those who've been willing to trudge through all the mediocrity are rewarded with everything the world can offer, and if you're willing to do that, that probably means means these elements I've talked about are something that appeal very strongly to you, as was the case for me. The good thing to know is that while Index Season 1 was mostly world building and Season 2 was a lot of build up to a climax that was only just teased at by the end, those who have stuck with it are finally getting to see a lot of the payoff.
They did not densetsu this one though. Who has watched densetsu? You know what I mean by what I mean by don't densetsu this. Hope they did not densetsu this.
Railgun and Accelerator just being announced,
the end of
there is
densetsu,
no better time
the
to
anime.
get into this franchise. So after all this,
worry,
there is
back to
one
it.
question left. How do you get into Index?
Yes, the question of the day, how do I get into it?
Do you want the long version or the short?
No,
Index
don't come
Season
with that
1,
again.
Then Railgun, then Railgun S, then Index Season 2.
What?
Do you want the long version or the short version?
Index Season 1, then Railgun S, then Index Season 2.
Okay.
That's the short version. However, that's a lot of episodes and a big commitment if you're still on the fence, and quite frankly, if I had attempted that, I would have never gotten past the first season of Index. So I wanted to share this streamlined method I used that made me decide whether I wanted to fully dive into the franchise.
Alright,
Now,
tell
I
us.
consumed it across different mediums, so if you don't want to do that, I will put the corresponding anime episodes, manga, or light novel volumes on screen if you just want to stick to one. This is Giguk's Guide to Speedrunning Index. I started off by reading the first Index arc via Volume 1 of the Index light novel, then I read the first arc in Railgun via Volumes 1 to 3 of the Railgun manga, then I watched the anime Railgun S, which is basically what sold me on the franchise. I managed to achieve this in a day, so it didn't take too much time, and the reason I chose to do this was I could quickly get an introduction to the magic world and also the science world while being able to
without all the boring stuff.
highlights that not only ties in a lot of the main protagonists, but is also a great fucking standalone story in its own right, in its best adaptation in Railgun S. Like I said, you can get into the franchise however you want. This is just my method because I'm an impatient prick. Also, this might be a good time to mention that all the light novels and manga are available via Bookwalker if you want to try this method out. Hashtag coupon code GIGUK for $5 off. This is no doubt a very daunting and quite frankly hard franchise to get into, and will definitely not be for everyone. But getting into this franchise, its world and characters has given me a completely unique experience in the 15 or so years I've been an anime fan, and that is not an easy feat to do anymore. If this seems like something way too heavy to get into, that's completely understandable. If you just want something more quick and casual, there are many other shows you can get into. But if the specific aspects I just talked about sound exactly like something you would appreciate and you just want to lose yourself in a franchise, fucking do it, man. Become one of us. Because I can see why this franchise joins the ranks of things like JoJo's, Monogatari, and Fate for having this really dedicated fan base that never shuts up about it. Because there really is nothing else like it.
Wow, come on! Look at that.
Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed me essentially just gushing over Index for almost 20 minutes. I do want to give a quick shout out to Bookwalker right now, who has the Index light novels, Railgun, and Accelerator manga if you want to try it out. Anyway, that's all I wanted to say. I've been Giguk, and I'll see you all next time.
Alright. Alright, man, that was quite the insight. Really freaking well explained, so concise and really so understandable. Man, I was totally intrigued by the opening song of Toaru Majutsu no Index. Like, I love the character designs, and pretty much the animation and the power effects I was seeing just really drew me in and totally jolted my interest. So this has totally jolted it once more. Alright, but he says most of the opening parts, the beginning parts, are a bit cliche and boring, but at the ending it gets interesting. I'll need to know how long it's boring for and see if I can power through all of it while still having my interest up. Alright, so he said getting into it, the short version. I didn't know I was gonna hear that again here from that of Fate. His explanation on trying to understand Fate though. Okay, so he said the short version was Majutsu no Index Season 1. He said Railgun S, right? A certain certificate Railgun S Season 1, then the Season 2 of Scientific Railgun before Majutsu no Index Season 2. I think that's what he said, right? Okay, I wonder how many episodes that is. I didn't know that this two had a lot of spin-offs and spin-readings, but well, nothing like that of Fate though. But gosh, it's really interesting, their power systems. Like, I was totally really drawn in by what I saw, and his explanation has even jolted my interest more. Like, I really love when power systems are very much explained and just well broken down. And from what he's saying, like he said, that of, was it Misaka, that he said was the MC for a certain scientific railgun. She can generate and control electricity. I really love that. And again, he said the application is what makes it even more interesting, and that I would really love to see how they do it. Okay. And well, a whole lot comes from electric generation, like magnetic repulsion, attraction, and whatnot. I mean, if they really showed all that in anime, then I would really, really want to see how it was done, shown, and talked about. And even that character I so much love, his creepy smile that I said that it looks like a character from Bungo Stray Dogs. He called him the Accelerator. He can control the vector alteration or thereabouts, like manipulating distance between things with magnitude and direction. I mean, that is really freaking insane and really so OP, but I'm glad they really put that limiter based off of the fact that he has to constantly calculate the mathematics formula for bending and twisting each vector and redirecting or amplifying it. I mean, that is really smart and so brilliant, because when you mentioned that was his power, I was like, well, it's really OP, like just having another super Nagato amplification here, like Nagato is from Naruto though. I mean, but hey, and I was really asking a whole lot about the color, because I saw it in one of the opening sequence images that was shown with the color. I thought like maybe it was like a test subject, that's why they put colors on him, but turns out the color helps to amplify his ability to calculate each physics calculation and mathematical calculation for manipulating each vector, and it runs out of battery power. So if he does that, then his power has to go down while he finds a way to recharge. I really love that, or he just uses his brain. I mean, that pretty much sounds very interesting. I'm so intrigued by all this. Anyway, can't wait to check it out. But man, oh man, I did to plow through a whole lot of boring parts according to what was said here. But hey, I'll see if I can like it, because I really love all he said and all I saw in the openings. And gosh, those openings were freaking amazing. Anyway, I'll anchor it here. Tell me what you guys think, and if you feel there's another short version sequence other than what Gigok said, please just put it down in the comments and I'll totally check it out and put it into consideration. Alright, and yeah, tell me what you thought about all this and whatnot, and if you have any other thing to recommend to me. Okay, and if you know how many episodes I need to plow through that is boring, or another sequence that I should follow, you can as well leave it in the comments. Alright, so thank you for watching, and I'll anchor it here. That'll be that for this. Please don't forget to like and subscribe button, and I will see you in the next one. Cheers.